Once again, guys, the best trader in the world is here to teach you how to be the second best trader in the world. That's right, guys. Today we're going to do a trade overview on the SPX 500. It was a quick trade that I took today. It was a scalp trade, and I'm just going to basically outline my exact thought process in why I was going to enter this trade and where my take profits are, all that jazz. And hopefully you guys can then do the same thing, following the same logic tomorrow, maybe. I don't know. So guys, starting on the 4 hour on the top side here, it's going to be very quick here for you guys. We see that this previous supply zone was tested once, and then we were looking at a possible reversal off of these highs once again, when we did actually come up and break out with conviction off of those previous highs and even beyond this supply zone there. I then thought that this trade is then going to continue to the upside and continue this longer term upward trend, and now the actual target is going to be up here, right? So if we look at this, I'm not ever going to want to get into a long immediately, right? I generally am going to want to pull back and wait for these retests of these untested zones. So what I've drawn out here is a nice blue demand zone there for you guys. So we can see that's where I would want to be longing. So if I use that logic then, guys, that I want to long there on the higher time frame, then what's going to happen on the lower time frame? Well, naturally on the lower time frame, we actually need to pull back and we need to come back to that zone. Now then, this is going to go all the way down to the 1 minute, so don't be so antsy yet. So now what we see is we saw a bounce off of this smaller area here, not quite touching that actual blue zone that we were looking for. I did draw a box there just so you guys can kind of see that this was also kind of a possible area we could bounce off of. And then we come back here, and my logic when I was watching this live on the New York Open session here was two things that are either going to happen off this drop off here. The first is this is the previous step down, or the previous supply zone, whatever you want to call it. I'm either going to see a rejection off of this area. It can look like that, or it can look like a sweep, which is what actually happened, sweeping the high, stopping people out, and then continuing to the downside. Or what can happen is we're actually just going to break to the upside here, and then this was in fact the actual trade that we should have taken rather than all the way down here in terms of the long side. But I'm still more biased to the downside here because I do want to actually fill this. So when I watched this, I was hoping that this supply zone would actually act as resistance and we would actually bounce off of that to the downside. That's what I was hoping for because this was my bias. It does look like now I might actually be wrong about that and this might be the bottom. But that doesn't matter because we still were able to get a good trade here. So what we did after that 15 minute, we saw the close right on the hour there. And we jumped to the 1 minute. Now on the 1 minute, guys, we're going to see a very light breakout. Nothing with strong support holding it up. And then you see just past the level, we're actually consolidating. We made a very, very slight higher high from here to here, right? That's pretty obvious, right? And then we broke that level, completely broke down, and then we closed back within that zone. So my bias then now is still matching up to I wanted to reach this blue zone, and I'm seeing a sweep of these highs. So I'm thinking that it's going to actually rally off of this to the downside to touch that blue zone there. Now then, the actual entry was on this level here because I wanted to wait for that retest, because I don't want to enter immediately after breaking down. I wanted to make sure that we're getting a good entry. So it was right on that line there. Let's put that on the line. And the stop was just above, maybe a slight move there, just in case there's any spread. And then where are we actually going to be targeting on this trade? We're going to be targeting back, if we go to the 15-minute level here, we want to look for the closest supply or demand or important level here. So the actual supply, the demand zone that were of interest was right here. And we targeted that perfectly right there for a 4.3R trade. Nice little chunk of cash right there. And it did actually then come back for another little wick down. We would have been able to target this 1 minute one if we did actually want to. This is a 1 minute demand zone, but they're not very valuable in my opinion. That's not exactly where I'd want to target. So we took it all off right there. There wasn't really any other important levels to target, so that was the only one. Little 4 times what I risked profit, and then it would have come back up and stopped us out. Now, what is going to happen from here, we're not completely sure, because if we're jumping back to the 15 minute, it still looks relatively weak, right? We're still kind of seeing sweeps of these highs, barely insignificant gains. So I do still think there's a good possibility that this is going to come all the way back down here. You guys will have to check it out. I'm not guaranteed, but this is what it's looking like in my opinion as of right now, based off of what we can see. And then we should stop punt these people, and then we can move to the upside and ultimately target up there. So if you guys are looking for a trade on the SPX, that's kind of my personal bias as of today. And we did make a nice, perfect little scalp trade here based off of what? We based it off of basically the 4 hour. And I wanted to long the 4 hour. And all I wanted to do is wait for a point where other people will also be longing. So I knew that it would continue down until we got to that point. So then we wait for an optimal entry point. We zoom all the way down to the 1 minute for the exact precise entry. It's absolutely flawless, and it worked out perfectly. This was actually a trade that I took during a lesson that I was actually teaching someone right there. So he can definitely contest that this was an idea that we talked about live. It was a really cool trade, and I'm glad he got to see it, and I'm glad I get to share it with you guys now, because that is a great live trade recap for you guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you guys are interested in learning some more, please join the Discord in the link in the description below. There's a free one. There's also a paid signal group. If you are interested in the signals, then you can do that, but the free version is also very good for most people. Please make sure you hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.